What's up, everybody? Bloody Bill Vox coming at you again for episode 5 of Dropkicks and Joysticks. You know, eventually I'll probably stop saying the episode numbers. But, you know, it's like a young child. A young child show. We've made it to episode 5. And as you're listening to this, we are coming off of the SummerSlam Premium Live event. I recorded this episode before the event took place. But heading into the event, it definitely seemed like a solid card. It seemed like there was great potential for it to be a great show. So hopefully, as I'm sitting here saying that it had that potential, that it actually delivered. There was Brock Lesnar and Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns and Jey Uso, Seth Rollins and Finn Balor, Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey, Gunther and Drew McIntyre. Lots of good stuff going on for SummerSlam. So hopefully, like I said, as I sit here saying that it had potential to be a good show, that it actually was a good show. And it'll be the first time that, coming out of this, that an AEW TV has gone up against a WWE PLE. It'll be interesting to see what Collision's numbers did. Again, as I will probably point out a few more times, I'm recording this before SummerSlam. So it'll be interesting to see if the AEW television number took any sort of hit this week, where it's going head-to-head with SummerSlam. I believe they both start at 8 p.m. SummerSlam will have a pre-show, but in terms of main card action, both start at 8 p.m. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not AEW takes a hit or if they maintain their audience, which will kind of tell you how much crossover there is going on. And, of course, we're talking traditional TV numbers, not necessarily social media and all of that other stuff. Before we get into this week's topic, if you'd like to follow me on social media, you can do so in a variety of different places. At Bloody Bill Vox is the handle. Among those handles, though, that I'm starting to feel like I might get, I don't know, inactive on. Kick and Threads are two that I'm just, I don't know, I'm kind of struggling with establishing any sort of foothold in. Kick is, you know, another version of Twitch, and it seems like a tough nut to crack without kind of moving all your eggs over into that basket. Like if you're in the Twitch world, you've got your days there. Well, then if you want to try to grow on Kick, then you need to add some days over there. And, you know, there's only so much time one can spend on those places. And then Threads was supposed to be the big Twitter replacement. And let's see, as of the recording of this episode, I said I gave myself about another week before I really probably just stopped posting on it. So as this episode drops, probably got a couple days left of Threads action, because for what was supposed to be the big displacer of Twitter, it didn't displace anything. Twitter seems to be alive and well, or X, or whatever. But anyway, you can still find me on all of the various social media channels at Bloody Bill Vox. The most notable ones, if you want to catch me by most active, it would be Twitter/X, Facebook, and of course YouTube at Bloody Bill Vox. Those are the three places that I am the most active. Of course, you know, we got Instagram, and we got Kick and Twitch and all the other different places, Teespring, Ko-fi. But those three there, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, those are the ones to really go by. But anyway, let's not jaw anymore. Let's get into the topic of discussion. What seems to be the topic of discussion, you ask? Well, the topic of discussion this week is WWF Wrestlefest. That's right, we're taking it to the arcades this week. So far, I've stuck to a lot of console memories, and that's where the majority of them are going to be. But we've got a few arcade memories, and this one in particular, WrestleFest, is just, it's tops for me when it comes down to the arcade. Whenever I would go to an arcade as a kid, the two arcades that I would look for to see if they had were WWF Wrestlefest and The Simpsons. And I'll tell a story later about building my own cabinet and how it came down to the two of those. But WrestleFest, there's just something about that game that I will forever hold on a high pedestal. It's like the perfect wrestling arcade game, and still to this day, I can turn it on any day of the week, and I can play through it, play through the modes, win the tag team championship, do Royal Rumble matches, and never get tired of it. And it's got a roster of like 10 guys. It was released in June of 1991. It was the follow-up to the 1989 release WWF Superstars, both of which were produced by Technos Japan to be specific. WrestleFest boasted better graphics and better sound over Superstars. Superstars was a fun one. We'll talk about that one in another episode because there's at least one good story that I can kind of tell with Superstars. In short form, long form, I could probably make a long form. But anyway, WrestleFest was the sequel to Superstars. And like I said, better graphics, better sound. You could debate about which roster was better. I don't have the Superstars roster in front of me, but I do recall, I can turn around right here at my desk because I have a Superstars poster. So we got the Macho Man Randy Savage, we got Hulk Hogan, we got the Hacksaw Jim Duggan, we got the Ultimate Warrior, the $1 Million Man, the Big Boss Man, Andre the Giant, and the Honky Tonk Man. That was the roster for Superstars. And then, of course, the roster for WrestleFest, the playable roster, was Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior, Jake the Snake Roberts, the Big Boss Man, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, Sergeant Slaughter, Mr. Perfect, Demolition Smash, Demolition Crush, and Earthquake that are non-playable characters in WrestleFest were Road Warrior Hawk, Road Warrior Animal, Mean Gene Okerlund, who also appeared in the original, and Mike McGurk, the late 80s, early 90s female ring announcer from the World Wrestling Federation, handled the ring announcing duties in WrestleFest. And then in WrestleFest, we had two playable game modes. We had Saturday night's main event, the Tag Team Challenge, Gauntlet, whatever you want to call it. And then, of course, the Royal Rumble match, or the Battle Royal, where you would pick one of the playable roster and every other character would take their turn coming into the ring, very similar to a Royal Rumble match. Those are the only two modes to the game. Very simplistic. It also featured a continuation mode. So if you had a bunch of quarters in your pocket and you wanted to beat this game, you could do so. And really, it didn't need a ton of quarters. You could get it done for about $5. If you were really willing to sink in the quarters and the time, you could get it done for about $5, which was really cool. As somebody that frequently did not have a ton of money to spend in an arcade, knowing that I could best a game for $5 was great. In fact, that $5 threshold is what led to a concept I was doing for a little while. When I first got into live streaming and content creation, I called it the $5 Challenge. And we take an arcade game and pump in whatever $5 would buy us. So if it was 1 quarter equals 1 credit, you get 20. But in the cases of those games where it was, 4 quarters equals 1 credit, well, then you only get yourself, 5 credits then? So the $5 challenge was based on, how far that $5 really went. So a game like WrestleFest where you get 20, it became pretty manageable. An additional mode in WrestleFest, so I was talking about the two different game modes as well as the continuation. It's not selectable, but you gotta give love to it. The Big Blue Steel Cage, the classic Big Blue, is present in this game. It's not selectable in a match mode. It shows up seemingly at random in the tag team mode. So when you're going through your matches to try and get to the Legion of Doom, at random you'll be inside of the Big Blue Steel Cage, the 15-foot high solid steel cage. Got to give love to it though, because it's a classic. That one is an absolute classic in terms of steel cages. You know, we've got the traditional fencing, and then we've got this steel bar contraption. I'm not sure why WWE decided that's what a steel cage needed to look like, when the standard for so many years seemingly had been the chain link fence. But I'm glad they did, because it turned into being one of the most notorious structures in wrestling history still to this day. People hold up the Big Blue in high regard. It's included in play sets. It's still included in the video games. You know, WWE hasn't used that style of cage since the 90s. And to this day, you can still have the Big Blue steel cage donning your WWE 2K video games. So that goes to show how legendary that simple structure became. So I would have been doing it a disservice to not mention that it was at least playable in WrestleFest. Yeah, you couldn't select it yourself, but it was certainly playable. So going back on the game modes, obviously the Rumble match is pretty self-explanatory. The ring fills up, the ring empties out, there's a winner. When it comes down to the tag team mode, the tag team mode is fun because you pick your two players in the start. A lot of times I like to go with combinations of Demolition. I always like picking Demolition. Hogan and Warrior is a good pairing. I like doing Jake Roberts and the Big Boss Man. Mr. Perfect and Ted DiBiase was another pairing I like to do. Earthquake and the Big Boss Man, even though it was heel and baby because of the size of the two of them. Jake Roberts and Earthquake was another one I like to do because I found it to be an ironic pairing, considering Earthquake killed Damien back in the day. But what happens in this one is you take on 4 matches because there's 8 other characters. So you have 4 matches, and then you get to the Legion of Doom. The Legion of Doom is pretty... they are a boss tag team. I found that my best course of action when getting into that match with the Legion of Doom is to just quick tag, and spam the punch button. You know, knock these guys down, knock them down. Because eventually in these tag team matches, the partner knows that their partner is licked, and they don't try to break up the pin. But at first, the Legion of Doom, they're brutal. Like both of the early WWF arcade games, because there was WrestleMania, the arcade game, but Superstars and WrestleFest, both featured strong final boss team character types. In Superstars, it was the Mega Bucks, Andre the Giant and the $1 Million Man. And then in WrestleFest, it was the Legion of Doom. I argue that they made the Legion of Doom a little bit easier to best than Andre the Giant and the $1 Million Man. Never in my life have I bested WWF Superstars. I still try anytime I come across a WWF Superstars cabinet, and it's very few and far between. I used to be able to run into both WrestleFest and Superstars in Hampton Beach, which is a body of water type deal, you know, the beach. I was going to call it a beach. I'm like, don't call it exactly what you just said it was. But that's what it is, whatever. It's a beach in New Hampshire, here about an hour away from home. And we used to go there, we being my family, pronouns, pal. We used to go there every summer for a week. Usually it was in the month of August. And one of the days, typically it was the Wednesday, because that's when we'd be going down there for the fireworks anyway. And if there was a rain day, we might go another time. But typically, Wednesdays was the arcade day, because that's when we were down there for the weekly fireworks. And still to this day on Wednesday nights, so tonight as I record this episode, at Hampton Beach at sundown, there will be fireworks. But Wednesday was the day we were there, so that was the day we would get to go to the arcade. And I haven't been to Hampton Beach in years, so I don't know what it's still like today. But when I used to go there, there were 2 arcades on the main strip, and then there was this little hole-in-the-wall place that had a few arcade games. That's the one that had Superstars. But on the main strip, it might have even been 3 on the main strip, but there was at least 2 that I remember. And one of them, and I can't remember which one it was, it's like they were like 3 in a row. One came first, and one was a little bit further down, then the other one was a little bit further down from that. Stores all in between. I want to say it was the second one. So there was one that was attached to the Hampton Casino Ballroom, which is a music venue or entertainment venue right on the beach. It's connected to one of these arcades. Then a little further down, I feel like it was called like Funland Palace or something. That's the thing. I never really paid attention to what the names of these arcades were. I just knew what they were. You know what I'm saying? But there was that one, and then there was another one that was kind of a little fancier in its storefront. It had like all glass doors and stuff. I feel like that one burned down. But anyway, on Wednesdays when we would go to the main strip for our fireworks, our fried dough, and our arcades, as soon as I could get away from everybody when I was old enough to be, they'd let me kind of roam the strip as long as I returned to where I needed to return, I would go running off to that middle arcade so I could play WrestleFest, and I would play WrestleFest every time. It was the highlight of my summer to some degree, because I didn't run into WrestleFest in any other place other than this arcade in Hampton Beach. WrestleFest was not at any arcades here in my city, not anywhere around me. I don't even run into WrestleFest arcades today. So when we would go to Hampton Beach in the summertime for that family vacation, yeah, I looked forward to the beach. Yeah, I looked forward to the sand and the sun and the fun and the food and the cottage and, all of that. But I looked forward to that Wednesday because I knew that was my one time guaranteed every year that I got to play WrestleFest. And maybe that's why I hold it in such a high regard to this day. Like, the term mark in wrestling is used very, in a very derogatory manner. I will happily call myself a mark for WrestleFest. The room that I sit in, I've got a phony WrestleFest marquee printout along with Superstars and WrestleMania the arcade game. We'll talk a little more about it in a few, but I've got a custom-built WrestleFest arcade. One of my bins for business has a WrestleFest marquee sticker on it. I just love WrestleFest. I'm always looking for the WrestleFest 24x36 poster, even if it's a reprint, which I'm pretty sure the Superstars one that I have is a reprint, but I don't care if it's a reprint. I just love WrestleFest. Everybody has that thing that they love, and WrestleFest, for some reason, for me, is that thing that I love, and I suspect it's because it ties together a lot of my family vacation memories of going to Hampton Beach and being there on Wednesday nights for those fireworks. Because those fireworks shows were great. And of course, being a wrestling fan, pyro and fireworks, I used to always imagine that it was some big championship celebration as we'd be sitting on the beach. And sometimes I'd even stand up and do my own poses and stuff. I guess there was so much going on the beach. You could kind of get away with doing whatever you needed to do to have fun, and nobody's going to make fun of you. And of course, as a kid, you're not as self-conscious about that, I think. Like as a teenager and an adult, we're very aware of all of our surroundings, and I think we become more mindful of people judging us and looking at us and snickering at us and wondering, are they laughing at what we're doing? Are they laughing at us? But as a kid, you don't worry about that sort of stuff. So, maybe WrestleFest has that role in my childhood of tying a lot of good around it, because when we were at those arcades, it wasn't just WrestleFest. It was Simpsons, it was Skee-Ball, it was the gun games, it was the Home Run Derby, it was the basketball games, it was playing USA versus Russia in the Dome ice hockey. Those weeks in Hampton Beach, I can remember so fondly. And when I got to be older, and we were still doing it, because we kept doing it through, I don't know, I might have been 12 or 13. I can't recall. Whenever my uncle started having kids, and, he started having less money. Whenever he started having kids, and the oldest, cripes, I believe they just turned 18 years old. So we're talking a little while back. But anyway, I started to be allowed to take walks wherever I wanted to go. So there'd be many a times where I wouldn't want to go down to the beach, because I was, I got to be a hefty kid. One summer in particular, I put on 55 pounds because I spent it at a Chinese all-you-can-eat buffet. Friggin' amazing food, though. I mean, my waist size and my knees and everything else had regrets, but man, I had no regrets then, because that food was fantastic. But anyway, I got to be a bit of a hefty kid, so I didn't always want to go down to the beach and take my shirt off. This was starting to be the age where puberty was hitting, starting to notice girls, and, there were a lot of other girls on vacation with their families, and, I had already been made fun of quite a bit for my weight, so, I was already starting to not like taking my shirt off. And so instead of going to the beach, I would take some of my money that I had, and I would take long walks down to the strip. Now, the strip from our cottage I never clocked it, but geez, it was had to be a good 2-mile walk. I'm going to do a little Googling while I'm talking about it. But the point I'm getting at is I would take early morning walks to be there when it opened, so I could enjoy WrestleFest in the morning while everybody was gone. So that was about a 2.6 mile walk, according to Google. Says that from the approximate of Butternut Hollow, which was the cottage that we stayed at, the neighborhood. I don't remember the exact number, but it was right on the edge of it, so close enough. To the casino ballroom was 2.6 miles. So even if the other one was still like maybe a quarter mile away from that, so you're still talking 2.25. So I make that walk super early to go play WrestleFest. So yeah, the WrestleFest, man, I love it so much. I'm remembering when you start telling a story, you can almost take yourself back to it. So I remember just the way the sun made everything look. The sun wasn't quite up and out and blazing yet when the place would first open. There was still some shadows kind of being cast, little hazy almost at times. And it was quiet to where you could actually really hear all of the arcade games. Because once it got really busy, you could hear them, but you couldn't really hear them clearly. So when I would take those walks down there to play WrestleFest, I could really take in all of the sounds, not just of WrestleFest, but of every other arcade game that was there. Yeah, WrestleFest just really ties in a lot of good memories of my childhood. And it's funny because I make notes for doing this podcast, and then I sit down and I kind of pull from them. And my note about the Hampton Beach play was, it was a simple line. Hampton Beach play, every chance I got via the family vacation. I don't think I realized when I wrote that note down how significant that game really was to a lot of positive memories in my life. I said last episode before, you'll notice kind of a common theme in some respects is that a lot of my game memories don't include friends all the time. Because a lot of games would be played in an era where I was kind of shutting in, shutting out, that sort of deal. And, a lot of negative stuff going on because I was a hefty boy. My confidence was low. I didn't really feel like I had a lot of friends. I felt like a lot of people made fun of me, kind of deal. So WrestleFest stands out as a positive amongst, all those little challenging things that were going on as I was starting to go through puberty and things of that sort. And, not doing well in school and mental health challenges and, ideations of ending my life at a young age and all that stuff. So it was, I didn't realize until sitting here talking about it now, what a positive impact the game really had. And it makes sense now, even more so, out of why back during the pandemic, I felt the need to build my own WrestleFest arcade cabinet. And it happened completely by accident. It was not a part of the original plan. So I had been going to Walmart time and time again, and I had been seeing this company pop up called Arcade 1-Up, and there was a Mortal Kombat cabinet. It was skinned with Mortal Kombat 2. And I kept seeing it, and they had it set up, and I was like, this is really interesting. Kept passing it. I was like, I always wanted to have arcades in my house, and some of the most trouble I ever got into as a kid was stealing money to go to the arcades. So I'm like, how rich would it be to have an arcade of my own in my own house? So after much pondering and walking back and forth and indecisiveness, I finally decided to go and buy this Mortal Kombat Arcade 1-Up, and it started an explosion that I've since gotten out of. I eventually got up to 7 different cabinets. Started with Mortal Kombat. Then we had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Then I came across a Marvel Superheroes on a nice clearance deal at a Walmart up north. It's about $149, and these things at the time were retailing for $300. So $149 was a pretty good deal for me. And the lineup on the Marvel Superheroes cabinet was fantastic. So we drive, I think it was to Tilton. We drive about an hour to go pick this bad Larry up. We get it home, we get it set up. Oop, soundbar doesn't work. All right, so I open a ticket. Their customer service was pretty slow, but would take care of stuff. Get it all set up, go to start playing. Oh, one of the joysticks doesn't really work. It's because the cables, the soldering on the inside was not well done. So I'm like, well, damn. What do I do with this? Because now it's I can't really play it because the joystick doesn't really move right. I'm waiting for these guys to send me proper speakers. Why wait for these two simple parts, and why wait for the joystick? Because at this point now, we're waiting for a joystick. We're waiting for a soundbar, which they sent me both of, by the way. But something about the process I was not willing to wait for. So I jumped on the internet and Facebook and started doing all my research and eBay and everywhere else you get. And I bought all of the parts that I needed to gut the inside of the arcade one up, fill it with updated buttons, cables, motherboard, the chip stuff, whatever. Throw it all inside and rig it all up so that way I could have a WrestleFest arcade at home without having to buy a gigantic, big, huge, bulky unit. I have a friend that actually has one. I don't know if it's fixed yet. It was defective like a day after I got it home. Poor guy. But he said it took 4 people to carry the damn thing. I can lift this thing up by myself. So I also went to a decal place because apparently custom arcades and arcade modding and that sort of stuff is a very, very large and widespread community, and I did not realize that when I first got into the hobby. And so I was able to get custom skins, nice light-up marquee. I got a control deck. I got the riser thing with the WWF logo. I got a little custom 25-cent coin buttons in the front to kind of simulate where you'd put quarters in. The whole deal. You got the whole deal wrapped up as WrestleFest. I haven't turned the sumbitch on in a long time. Obviously, there'll be some gameplay. You're already watching it, but as I'm recording it, I haven't recorded it yet. So you're seeing the result of me turning that sumbitch on. But I hadn't turned that sumbitch on in a very, very long time because my back is in shambles. My knees always hurt, and I don't know. I haven't been in the mood for turning on the stand-up unit lately. But I love being able to look over it at any time, and I still dust it and clean it. In fact, as I'm saying I dust it and clean it, I'm realizing I haven't done that in a little bit. So after the recording of this episode, that's what I'll be doing. I'll be dusting and wiping down the WrestleFest to make sure it stays looking nice. I may not turn it on often, but it's going to look nice. Hot damn it. Because, you got to have pride in your stuff. There are videos of the build and of the showcasing of it on my personal YouTube. And I'll share those links on my social media. Either I will have shared them before this episode dropped, or I'll share them afterwards whenever I think about it. I'm such a scatterbrain sometimes, thanks to the concussions and traumatic stress disorder and all that jazz. And sometimes I say I'm going to wait to do something and then I jump the gun. Like, for example, I said on here that I had figured out something. Sorry about that. Knocked something over. I had said that I had figured out something for my YouTube show, WWE 2K23 Fantasy Warfare, and that I would wait to make the announcement until the day after the episode dropped. And it was the episode that dropped on July 24th. So I was supposed to wait until July 25th to make an announcement. And I believe I made that announcement on the 21st of July in the afternoon. So I absolutely did not wait at all to do that that whole deal. I absolutely jumped the gun. And that's just what I do sometimes. So those videos, I'll either share them before or after this episode drops. But at this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and put a quick pause on this episode because I've got one of my lovely neighbors have returned home, and they seem content on blaring their music right outside my house. I don't even know if you can pick it up right now. So we're going to take a quick pause, and then we'll start it again in just a little bit. So, yeah, live time edits here in Dropkicks and Joysticks. We'll be right back. I should do a phony ad in the middle. Maybe I will. Okay, we're back. I didn't do any silly ads. I went and paced around my house. Paced around my house waiting for the silly little music concert to end. I don't even know if it picked up as of right now. I'll know when I do the post edit on this, but I'm sure we all know that neighbor that we all have. That inconsiderate neighbor that always comes in clonking and stomping around. Well, this one always comes in pounding her subwoofers in her car like it's a goddamn outdoor concert, and then she's got loud screaming brat kids. Easily the worst neighbor I've ever had, and I used to live above these loud white supremacist neighbors that were just very, very interesting to live around. I'll say that much about them. They were intriguing. They made a lot of non-verbal threats, even a few verbal threats, and this one's never done anything of the sort, has plowed down a kid with her car. But I digress. That interruption out of the way. I apologize if the episode seems a little split, but that's okay. Before we had to take our break, I had talked about Hampton Beach and talking about building my own at-home WrestleFest cabinet. And then it was somewhere around there that I started getting distracted by the boom, 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 boom outside. And like I said, you may not even be able to hear it. I'm not quite sure. I've never had a distraction like that while I've been recording here in the home studio. I don't normally record at this time. It's in the evening. I usually will record during the day on a lunch break. But anyway, let's get back on subject here for the closing moments here, because truth be told, I wasn't that far away from reaching the conclusion of this week's episode. I only had a couple more bullet points I wanted to talk about related to WrestleFest, and I was going to wrap it up. So, we were almost done. Damn it. Couldn't get it done in one take. Not my fault, though. Not my fault. Although one could argue that, hey, you could have played through the noise. Could have kept going through the noise. You never know. Could have been fine. But anyway, let's get back into our talking points. So, WrestleFest, many people have always wanted that game to come back. I still, to this day, see people asking for reboots and releases of it via Arcade 1UP. And at one point in time, I did a little video talking about why that would be virtually impossible to re-release those games without rebooting and scrubbing the hell out of them. Not to say that they wouldn't do it, because they did that with WWF WrestleMania Steel Cage Challenge for a plug-and-play release in 2018. They removed the Mountie and Hulk Hogan and replaced them with the Ultimate Warrior and Razor Ramon. And the funny thing about that replacement is I am fairly certain when the game originally came out, Razor Ramon was not even a part of the WWE or F at that time yet. So that's not to say that they wouldn't ever scrub a game and re-release it, but they were going to reboot WrestleFest. In fact, they did reboot WrestleFest on iOS devices, the Apple operating system. You could get it on iPod Touches and iPads. I can't recall if the iPhone was doing that sort of thing yet, but it was released on that platform, and it was supposed to get a release on PlayStation, Xbox, and I believe the Nintendo Wii, but it never happened because THQ went under. And when 2K bought the properties, apparently it just got shelved because here we are 11 years later. That project has never seen the light of day ever again, which is a real disappointment because the iPad version was actually kind of fun. I played it on a little tiny iPod Touch, and I had fun with it. So I can only imagine the fun somebody might have had with it on an iPad. But there was a trailer for the game on the PlayStation Store anyway. I've never had an Xbox where there was access to the store. The original might have had it, I don't know, but because I had an original Xbox for a hot minute. But there was a trailer, and it was coming soon, and that was just the end of it. And there's never been another word about it ever since. Very disappointed in that, because it was modernized, but it still very much looked and played like WrestleFest. It had classic characters. It had current day characters. The mobile version even had download content with additional characters and additional arenas. It really seemed like it had great potential to be a side title at the time for WWE games. They like to do those side titles every once in a while, and WrestleFest seemed like it was going to be that one to break up the SmackDown versus Raw series, which was transitioning into just WWE, like the year. That would be the year. The was the year. Because we had WWE 12, we had WWE 13. We would have had WWE 14, but that was when the transition from THQ to 2K became official. In fact, if I recall, THQ did most of WWE 2K14, and 2K kind of got it over the finish line, so to speak. Most recently, and as of the recording of this episode, they still haven't talked about what the upcoming announcement was, but 2K Games was teasing some sort of upcoming and forthcoming announcement. A lot of people are speculating that it could just be a free DLC pack, or that it's going to be some sort of additional mode into WWE 2K13. I speculated that it could just be an entirely different title, a side title, kind of like when they did Battlegrounds and All-Stars. And so as I'm sitting here, I was like, maybe there's a small chance that this WrestleFest project gets rebooted and, brought back to life. There was some rumors a couple of years ago about SmackDown Here Comes the Pain getting a remaster, which would be tough in some respects. So you might have to remaster it and reboot it using today's roster. Because a lot of that roster might be tough to get under deals for the game. And then there'd be some that they wouldn't want to include. Like I do know Chris Benoit was in that game. But anyway, never has there been a WWE sequel to WrestleFest, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that there was an official sequel to WrestleFest. And I will not feature the gameplay of it, even though it is a part of the WrestleFest discussion, because I quite honestly consider this sequel to be an embarrassment to the legacy of WrestleFest. And I think this is probably how we're going to wrap up this week's episode, because I haven't really gone on any proper rants yet, but I'm going to go on a proper rant here to wrap things up this week on the game Retromania Wrestling. Now, when Retromania Wrestling first came along, they made it very clear that they were using WrestleFest as their inspiration for making this game. WrestleFest was the inspiration. They were studying it. They were going to do everything in their power to make this game look, feel, and play like the game that we all remembered and loved. They even went so far as to get their blessing from the original makers of WrestleFest to call themselves the official sequel to WrestleFest. Wow. Talk about a vote of confidence. And they came in with a decent roster of, some classic NWA stars and some top indie talent. And then we were going to get some DLC. We were supposed to get Mr. Hughes. We were supposed to get James Storm. I feel like there was somebody else. So the game is supposed to come out, and it's looking real promising. They did a lot of the stuff very similar to WrestleFest. The entrances, the way the arenas look, the style of the gameplay, the way the intros are presented, just everything's looking real promising. And then the delays start happening. Delay after delay after delay. It got to the point I even took the day off of work for what was supposed to be the big release day, and then 12 hours ahead of that release, they say it's been delayed again. We hit some speed bumps we didn't expect to see. How do you hit speed bumps 12 hours ahead of release? But whatever, the game comes out, we all get to play it. It seems to be fine until you get into the story mode, and oops, To be continued. Are you kidding me? To be continued. We heard about all of this love and this care and this attention that we're putting into making this WrestleFest sequel. We even get the blessing to call it the official WrestleFest sequel, and we can't even finish the damn story mode. And hey, let me give y'all a little spoiler alert. To this day, 3 years after the original release of the game, I think 3 years or 2 years, whatever it's been, 2-3 years, it's been a while. They still haven't finished the game. There's still no story mode. There's still no DLC. Every time somebody asks these guys, hey, where's Mr. Hughes? Hey, where's James Storm? Hey, where's our finished story mode? We always get the answer of next update. So I believe their official name is Retrosoft Studios, but man, oh man, Retrosoft Studios, you're an embarrassment to the legacy of WrestleFest. As somebody that has sat here and professed his love for WrestleFest for a little over 45 minutes and could probably keep professing his love for WrestleFest over and over and over again, but I would just start to sound like a broken record. And I could play this game for hours upon hours, and I know I'm not the only one who feels this way, but you're an embarrassment. How dare you put out a game that you call the sequel to WrestleFest and do us as dirty as you did? How dare you? The game wasn't finished. The roster was okay. The gameplay was okay. You hit it on 70 points, but you failed us when it came down to delivering the finished product. You know, a lot of games get dragged for being incomplete, but they make their strides over time. They fix bugs. They go through things. They get it done. These guys have done nothing. They've done nothing to fix this game in 2 years, and unfortunately, it kicks around out there with the tagline of being the official sequel to WrestleFest. Well, my friends, as I sit here before you, wrapping up this episode of Dropkicks and Joysticks, I am here to say that I officially do not recognize that game as a sequel to WrestleFest. It is inspired by WrestleFest. It pays tribute to WrestleFest. But is it a sequel to WrestleFest? Sweet Jesus, no. Because if that's a sequel to WrestleFest, I don't know, man. I don't even know what to say or where to go from there, because every time I think about that game, it makes me angry. I played it all the way through when it first came out, a little over 6 hours of gameplay to get through the story mode and the individual match modes, and to reach the end of that 6 hours and get to be continued and still to this day never being able to continue is absolutely bonkers. So I don't think any of us are fooling ourselves at this point into thinking that DLC is ever coming and that we're ever getting a finished story mode. If they haven't done it after 2 years, they ain't ever doing it. That next update is never coming. There are games that have updated themselves time and time again in the time that these guys have not issued one. So if you see Retromania Wrestling out there, buyer beware. It may call itself the official sequel of WrestleFest, but good Lord, it fails in so many ways. It compares well in a few different ways. But for how they did us dirty on the DLC and the finished story mode, I give it a big old thumbs down and say steer clear. Unless it's like super cheap. If it's like $5, $10, sure, go ahead. Snag it for that price. Because you'll play it and you'll get those WrestleFest feels. But if you really want the WrestleFest feels, man, Go searching out your local arcades. There's still WrestleFests around there. If you live in the New Jersey area, I believe a store, I think it's called the Wrestling Collector. They've got a WrestleFest arcade in their store. They're still around. And then, of course, there are other ways to play it that I will not share with, but you know how to do it. But if you're looking for that WrestleFest fix, I say stick with WrestleFest, because that's where it's at, man. That's the game. That's the aces. That's the tops. That's my love, baby. But it's been fun here talking about WrestleFest. Again, I want to apologize for that brief interruption in the dialogue. I didn't know if it was being picked up, and I'll find out in post, and I'll be able to figure out for the future how we better react to those outside noise distractions. But low budget. We record from home. In the home studio, we do what we can. So we'll check things out and see how things go. But on that note, my friends, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here for Dropkicks and Joysticks. It's been fun. Episode 5 officially in the books. Episode 6 will be coming at you next Monday. We're going to go and cover something not a part of the mainstream of wrestling. We're going to cover a PlayStation 1 classic, Power Move Pro Wrestling. It's a classic to me anyway, because it was the first and only game that I'm aware of where you could actually tap out. You're bored with the match, you go ahead and tap out. And we'll talk about how that game was supposed to be New Japan Pro Wrestling's first domestic release, but there was fear about how the brand would perform here in North America versus where they normally released all of the games in Japan. But until then, my friends, it has been I, Bloody Bill Vox. If you want to connect with me on social media, you can do so at Bloody Bill Vox. Of course, like I said earlier, the most active places are Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Of course, you can find me elsewhere: Twitch, Kick, Instagram, Teespring, Ko-fi, Threads. I'm all over the place. Just remember that handle, at Bloody Bill Vox. But until next time, my friends, have fun out there, be safe out there, and I'll see you next time right here on Dropkicks and Joysticks.